morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be on this planet. Welcome to another edition of Football Picks here on TalkingSports.tv. Week 17 in the NFL, and let me just introduce our usual. We got the best handicappers in the entire planet here. Handsome Howard came and returns from a couple of weeks off on assignment here right in the studio. And Uncle Ben Walderman himself from UncleBen'sFootball.com joins us from his home office in San Diego, California. I'm Marty York. Uncle Ben, last week was absolutely incredible in the NFL. Not only were you on fire with a lot of your picks, but aside from that, the scoring. Guys, it's unbelievable. We have never, ever seen so much scoring in the NFL. We're seeing record numbers. There were more points scored last week in the NFL than at any time previously in NFL history. And the same was true for the week before. So what the heck is going on? Uncle Ben, let me start with you. What is wrong with the NFL defenses, or are the offenses just so unbelievable right now?
Good day, gentlemen. First of all, happy holidays to everybody up there in Toronto, Canada. I hope you're all keeping warm. Points have been aplenty, Marty. I got to tell you, I think it has more to do with the offenses and the referees, to be honest with you. I mean, there are so many penalties that are extending drives, personal fouls. I mean, St. Louis last week gave the game away. They had the game wrapped up, roughing the passer on a third down and 15 play, things like that, interference in the end zone. Basically, they're giving touchdowns away, the referees, when they do that. And they can be very influential on certainly the game and the total points scored in the game, and it's affecting the total numbers too. Last week, block punts for touchdowns, interceptions for touchdowns. It's just incredible. The point totals have been off the charts. The actual line makers, the odds makers themselves, if you look at some of the totals in the games, typically NFL totals used to run between 38 and 46, and this year I've seen more totals in the 50-point range than I've ever seen before, guys. I'm not sure what the heck's going on, but the offenses seem to be throwing the ball a lot more. It used to be the days of 3 yards in a cloud of dust that are over, my friends. Yeah. Okay, basically they don't really run the ball too much in the NFL anymore. Certain teams do, but by and large, it all happens through the airwaves, and the games seem to last longer. Right, these games used to end at 4 o'clock, 4:05 Eastern. Right away. Now these games are extending out 3 hours and 45 minutes. So there's more playing time because of the passing, and it just leads to more points, gents.
Handsome Howard, this to me looks reminiscent of what the Canadian Football League has done for years. You and I have followed the Canadian Football League in this country for a long time. Offense prevails in the CFL, although it is down in the CFL. The defenses have caught up. But in the NFL, as Uncle Ben said, we're seeing more and more passing a la the CFL. Why?
Well, first of all, I do agree with Ben when he mentioned about the referees dictating a lot of what's going on these days. And so many drives, so many, you see 3rd and 14 and balls that are thrown in very, very controversial, I would say controversial pass interference calls that just keep the drives alive. A few weeks ago when there was all that snow and people were expecting low-scoring games, I remember the Philadelphia-Chicago game. It was Philadelphia-Detroit game. Yeah. Philadelphia-Detroit game. And it was interesting how the offense was getting better grounding than the defense. They were able to make cuts better. The defense wasn't able to keep up with it. There was that Baltimore-Minnesota game where I think they got 4 touchdowns in the last 2 minutes. So some crazy stuff happening in the NFL these days, and definitely a lot of offense, a lot of throwing the ball. Pass defenses just aren't doing the job like they used to do.
I have to think that a large reason for this is that the quarterbacks are more athletic than they used to be. Used to be guys like Johnny Unitas would stand back in the pocket, your typical NFL kind of passer, just in the pocket and throw the ball. Well, now we're seeing these quarterbacks like Cam Newton and Colin Kaepernick and a lot of other guys, Russell Wilson to name another one, even Tannehill with Miami. They're running the ball a lot more. These guys are able to get out of the pocket and scramble and then sometimes throw off the run. So you're getting more athletic quarterbacks. I think that's one reason. I also believe that defenders are somewhat reluctant to be too aggressive because we have seen an increase in penalties, flags being thrown at what is perceived as defenseless receivers or that sort of thing. I think my own feeling is a combination of more athletic quarterbacks, and I agree with both of you gentlemen about the officials. I think they're having a say in what's going on. We're seeing a lot more flags in favor of the offense. And defenders are confused. They don't know what they should be doing. Should they be going after a guy? If they go too low, it's a penalty. If they go too high, it's a penalty. And if they're a few seconds late, God forbid, that's a penalty. So I think that there's a real quandary for the defenders, and I think it's resulting in a lot more offense. You buy that?
A lot of borderline calls, I'd say, like Howard was mentioning. You listen to John Gruden on Monday night even, and he says, you got to let these guys play a little bit. And they're just not doing that. A lot of borderline calls, most of them going to the offensive side, protecting the receivers, like you said, Marty, from these like defenseless hits or what have you. It's going to be interesting, though, to see how they do this in the playoffs. You know how in the NHL hockey sometimes, the rules during the season are a little different than the rules in the playoffs from an officiating standpoint, the clutching, the grabbing. It's going to be interesting to see how the NFL reacts to that, if they're going to stay with this very rigid program they have on protecting the players, not letting the receivers, bump. Back in the day, you could bump a receiver anywhere down the field until the ball was in the air. Now you can only bump the first 5 yards, which makes it a lot easier for your receivers to get open, leading to more points, which is the topic of discussion here. Why is there so many points?
Right.
But it's going to be interesting to see how these, what the mandate of the NHL officiating staff, the NFL officiating staff, will be in the playoffs, and if they're going to continue to call it as tight as they do, or if they're going to let them play some football.
You're watching Football Picks here on TalkingSports.tv. I'm Marty York. Handsome Howard came in studio, and from his home office in San Diego, California, Uncle Ben of UncleBen'sFootball.com. And if you want to catch Uncle Ben's picks for this week, Week 17, just go to UncleBen'sFootball.com and have a gander. Chances are you might do yourself a favor. Of course, we're going to give you, as we always do here each and every week, our handicappers' top picks. That will be a little later on, and that's free of charge. Hey, what do you want? Look, there are so many interesting games this weekend, which is just a boon for the NFL. I mean, here it is, Week 17, second last week of the regular season. 13 teams are playing this week with playoff implications. Howard, is there any one game or two games that really stand out in your mind?
Well, there's a lot of important games. I mean, the Baltimore-New England game is a very important game for both teams as far as playoff implications go. That Baltimore game Monday night really impressed me, the way the Ravens came back and won that game, especially their field goal kicker, Tucker, with the 62-yard kick there at the end of the game. I mean, that was as
Justin
clutch
Tucker
as
had 6 field goals.
6 field goals.
And that's all the scoring that Baltimore needed to prevail in that game. It was a very important game for Detroit.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for 1 second here. Uncle Ben, Baltimore, very much they're not the team they were last year without Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and those kinds of guys. They're not what they were last year. Yet here they are and they won the Super Bowl last year, lest anyone forgot. But here they are, I think, with a decent chance to get into the postseason. Talk about Baltimore for a moment, and then talk about Detroit as well. Ben, what do you think?
Well, the Baltimore Ravens, right, the defending Super Bowl champions, as you mentioned. Last year, if you remember, they limped into the playoffs, losing their last 3 games, I believe, and then they turned it on in the playoffs. Seems to be a little different this year. They sort of struggled out of the gates, but they've won 6 of their last 7 ball games, this team. And they just seem to, whatever it takes to get it done. I got to love John Harbaugh. What a great coach. This team, they lost Ray Lewis. They lost Ed Reed. Everybody was looking at, seems like they weren't going to get it done defensively. They're going to struggle. It's actually been the opposite. Their defense has really come through for them. Their offense has really struggled. They don't seem to put a lot of points on the board. But this team plays close ball games each and every week, and they seem to come out on the right side of the ledger. I mean, you got to love ball clubs like that. That's good coaching. You don't see the Dallas Cowboys doing that and winning close ball games, do you? So no. I think that really holds well. And the Baltimore Ravens hold their own destiny. If they can somehow this week beat New England, go into Cincinnati next week, beat the Bengals, that could still happen, guys. they actually win the division. And I can tell you, it's 5-6 weeks ago, no one in North America was predicting the Baltimore Ravens to win.
And the Detroit Lions, you'd probably have to say, are one of the choke teams of the season this year, Marty. I mean, games that they should have won. They blew a game earlier on at home against Tampa Bay, and just every time you think this team should win and they should break through, it doesn't happen.
And the Lions gave Jim Stafford a lot of money.
Matthew
Stafford a lot of money to be their quarterback. I mean, we're talking mega millions. He has turned over the ball so often.
Oh, he looked terrible there at the end of the game against.
He turned the ball over 30 times this year. Did you know that, Matthew Stafford?
Yeah,
30. He's like 21 interceptions and 9 fumbles or something like that.
I mean, so I don't think you have to.
Player.
I don't think you have to look any further than the quarterback to see why the Lions have been suffering these woes, and they go into this weekend favorites against the New York Giants. I don't know, guys. Have they reached the point where maybe they're just their own worst enemy and may even have a tough time against the woe-begone Giants? Or who do you like in that game?
Yeah, mentally that team's got to be struggling right now. I mean, to lose a game off a 62-yard field goal at the end of the game. I mean, how do you come back from that? So,
well, Justin Tucker is money. That guy, I mean, give that guy credit. He's the best kicker in the NFL. Yeah. He's a large reason. Kickers, you don't want to give kickers too much credit, but he's largely why the Ravens are back in this thing and why they've won. Yeah, I mean, this guy.
He doesn't miss.
He's a cool kicker, and he's also funny with his. He's got some good post.
Well, it was interesting what he said. He goes, "I didn't get all of it."
Yeah, he said, "I didn't get all of it on the 62-yard." What also was funny was here he was on national television after winning this game in pretty dramatic fashion, and he's talking about how happy he is that he has fantasy owners who follow him and pick him, and he's glad to contribute to their success as well. So he's hoping his fantasy owners shared in the success. I thought that was funny. You don't often hear that. But Ben, the Lions against the Giants this week, I don't know what the line is, but obviously the Lions are favored. Can they cover?
The Lions are favored by 9 points in this game. Personally, I think the New York Giants have packed it in. They're just playing up the slate here. They looked horrible last week against a pretty solid, obviously, Seattle Seahawks team. The Seahawks looked like the team to beat in the NFL on either the NFC or the AFC. They just looked like the team to beat. I think they're going to probably beat up on the Arizona Cardinals, who left I think they left it on the field last week in that overtime win in Tennessee. I don't see them competing with the Seahawks this week, but the Lions, I think, will get it done this week. I think they're going to rebound. I think they're going to score a bunch of points this week. They only scored 1 touchdown last week, I believe, against Baltimore, and they're playing against a defense this week that's really quite injured and like given up. They're just giving it up, the New York Giants. So I do take a lean to the Detroit Lions there at home this week. They need the victory, obviously, or they're completely eliminated. It's their last home game, and I just think they're going to, put some points on the board this week after a pretty much dismal offensive showing on Monday night national television.
Well, Handsome, one of Uncle Ben's commandments is don't worry about the line. Go with the team that you think is going to win, and the line will not even play into it. But I'm looking at it a little differently. I know you do as well. 9 points on the Detroit Lions right now. I mean, I just don't know if I could even if it's the New York Giants, who I agree have been laying down and want the season to end. But would you give up 9 points?
No, I don't like to give up 9 points in that game. However, I do.
Stafford's going to throw the ball into somebody's hands a couple times on the other team.
I do think the Lions will win the game. So there, I differ from Ben because I do think they'll win, but not cover.
16% chance of winning.
Yeah, that's folks. If you want to read about Ben's philosophy on that, just go to Uncle Ben's football.com, and he makes a very strong argument that don't even worry about the line. Just go with the team you think is going to win the game. Let's take a break, gentlemen. We have lots to talk about in anticipation of Week 17. Handsome Howard came in. Uncle Ben from UncleBen'sFootball.com. I'm Marty York. We'll be right back to talk more football after this. Don't go away.